Oh, hello. Welcome to my home. What shall we talk about? Oh, of course, the germs. Well, it all started for me in 1977 in Phoenix, Arizona, when I heard the Germs single was called Forming. The B-side was called Sex Boy. And the Forming side was all right. It was kind of amusing. And then the phone rang. It was the weirdest fucking thing. Hello? That was the foxy 15-year-old from Laguna with the purple bud. Anyway, she says hi. So, the B-side of the Forming single, it was recorded on a cassette in somebody's pocket in their pea coat or something. It was one of the most hideous things I'd ever heard. It was probably the worst or the best thing I'd ever heard in my life. I couldn't really tell which. And I called those guys. I got their phone numbers, Darby and Pat, and called them, told them that I was just starting to play drums and I was probably good enough for them. And I was thinking of moving to Los Angeles and I would like to be their drummer. And I asked them what kind of things they were into musically. And I was really into krautrock and all this really esoteric stuff like Stockhausen, various electronic and avant music. And I liked the Velvet Underground and that whole ilk of stuff. And of course, krautrock bands like Faust, Neu, and Cluster especially. And I loved the punk rock stuff that was coming out. The weird stuff like, Chelsea, the Lurkers, the Subway Sect, Eater, I don't know, just anything. There wasn't much then, but whatever there was, Peri Ubu. And I said, so what are you guys into? I ran down this list of things that I liked that were like that. And they said, well, I don't really know about any of that. But, and Pat said, we're really into like Queen. I said, what? And he goes, yeah, and Yes. I was like, whoa. He goes, oh, David Bowie. I'm like, okay. Then I called Darby, who was Bobby Pinn then, and told him about the same thing. And he said, yeah, well, at all those people you named, I know Brian Eno, but mostly I like David Bowie, and that's about it. And I guess I kind of like the Sex Pistols, but, I'm like, whoa, that's the weirdest thing. So I couldn't, and he liked Queen too, it's like, it really was perplexing, but, undaunted, I got my measly $1,200 trust fund. Really, that's not much as far as trust funds go. And I got a Chrysler Newport Custom. It's one of the longest cars ever made. If you ever see Cremaster 3, the Chrysler Newport Custom that I got was much larger than the Chrysler Imperials that were in that. So I got in that, threw a drum set in there, moved to Los Angeles, and with Rob Graves in the car, we moved here. And we went to the Elks Lodge to see the Mask Benefit, which is where the Germs were performing, after stopping at the Plunger Pit. The Plunger Pit was where everyone stayed when they were in town. Sid Vicious stayed there. I mean, people just would stay there when they were around. But there was these 4 girls called the Plungers. There was Trudy Argrela, there was Mary Rat, and Trixie something or other, and probably someone else. And I'm sure I'll remember it eventually. Maybe it was Alice Bagg. I don't know. No, it wasn't Alice Bagg, but I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. That was a long time ago. And it's in the book, so I guess I could always look it up, so I don't feel it too important to remember it. But the Plunger Pit was stopped at, closed, changed. The Elks Lodge Mask Benefit with 1 million bands that played at the Mask was attended. And that was my first sighting of the Germs with Nicky Beat on drums. I was kind of worried. This guy's pretty good. Then in the elevator, I was accosted by all these people with bands and that were managers of bands, because they had heard that this guy, this crazy nut, was coming out from Phoenix, all the way from Phoenix to play drums with this joke of a band, the Germs. So they all tried to, there was a terrible drummer shortage. Well, actually, no shortage of terrible drummers. Well, yeah, there was even a shortage of those. But they all asked me to be in their bands or their project bands or their clients band or whatever, and I just said no. I'm here to join the Germs. These guys were like, "What? Are you kidding? These guys are just nothing. They're horrible. They're a joke. We have management and interest and this song on the radio and this." And I said, "Look, I don't care. Maybe I'll do it as a side thing, but I'm here to join the Germs." And then I hadn't even been accepted as a member of the band yet, but I moved into the Canterbury apartments, and it was really cheap. It was like $100 something a month for a studio apartment in this rundown building with these like black people on PCP running around in the halls, like taking people's guitars and setting fires and stuff. Sometimes you'd find these weird bums sleeping in the hallway and make salads on them with all the various cleaning items and food stuffs and garbage and bodily excrement sort of things from the house. It was good fun. But the Mask, which was right nearby, so it was a convenient place for all the punk rockers to live. Some of the Germs lived there. Well, Lorna lived there, and I lived there. And we had to drive to Germs practice. Well, actually, we hung out in the Mask in the daytime. It was a rehearsal studio because they'd stopped having shows when I moved here. And we still hung out in the basement, which is what the Mask was, in the daytime. And that's where I would hang out with Pat and learn the songs on bass so I could sort of think about them and learn them on drums in my head. And it was just something to do anyway. And I'd jam with other bands there like the Skulls and the Controllers and such. Watch Joan Jett have fights with her girlfriend on Quaaludes. They'd be beating the hell out of each other, chasing each other around the Mask basement, and just yelling these horrible things at each other and grabbing each other by the hair and kicking the shit out of the other one. It was a good time. But the Mask, unfortunately, as a venue, was over. Although it stayed around as a rehearsal place long enough for me to audition for the Germs, which I did in about 3 inches of urine, water, beer, and whatever it was in that restroom. I set up the drums. A stolen sonar kit from Phoenix that a friend of mine found in his yard was going to sell me for $100, and then I just sort of moved here with it in the car and forgot to pay him. It was kind of an accident. Sorry about that, Stuart. However, the drums fit neatly in the cubicle where the toilet once was in the Mask bathroom, as did various members of the Germs, as they watched horrified while I played some kind of avant Cecil Taylor on drums kind of freak out thing. And they just sort of looked at me and said, I think Pat said, could you like play a song? I said, oh, okay. Well, luckily, Nicky Beat, who I had befriended, it was unavoidable. He was a friendly guy. Nicky Beat was also a good drummer. He was the drummer in the Weirdos and the fill-in drummer for the Germs since they didn't really have a drummer. And he had acquiesced to give me a couple of drum lessons. I'd only been playing for a couple of months, even though I'd been in a band in Phoenix playing drums. It was pretty brutal and caveman. Actually, probably the best drumming I ever did before I learned to play. But Nicky taught me how to play Life of Crime by the Weirdos on drums, and then he taught me some other thing. And then I guess I had to read this in the book to remember it. Nicky said, and then he told me that you couldn't take lessons with me anymore because mistakes were part of punk rock, and I was teaching you how to not make mistakes, and you didn't think that was right. I don't remember saying that, but I'm sure I thought that, because of course that's, otherwise why would I have ever thought that I could get away with any of this stuff? Because obviously none of it mattered. So there I was in the Mask bathroom. The Germs all went out in the other room and deliberated for a moment. And it was a tense minute there while I waited. And finally Darby and Pat and Lorna came back and said, well, you're a Germ. And that was it. The die was cast, as it were. We rehearsed a lot. I got pretty good, and the band got really good because I wanted to rehearse all the time, so I wasn't going to go and play in front of people and suck. No way. And, there's no way. I would never do anything that I couldn't already do well, generally. I'm sure, you've known someone like that, right? And finally, we played some shows, and it was a lot different in a way. It was still a big chaotic mess. As you can see watching this DVD, a lot of times Darby was in his own special world, and the band was in its own, just being a band and playing the songs world, which was a unique one sometimes. So but the rehearsals were really good. We started to really kick ass at rehearsals. We kept playing faster and faster because, well, I could play really fast. I couldn't play slow. I just kept playing faster and faster, and Pat would say, hey, that's cool, play it even faster. And I said, okay. And the thing was, I could. And I could, and it was easy. It's like, how fast should the song be? Oh, well, I guess the tempo should be at the apex of human endurance. So that's pretty much where the songs ended up, except for just the really slow, evil ones. So the Germs got different. We got faster. We got better. And we got, I guess, outright dangerous musically. If you remember when music had some kind of danger factor to it, this was it. And it was also psychedelically aware, too. A lot of people don't know very much about Darby. Of course, those people are the kind of the idiots that haven't read my book. If you can imagine someone like that existing. By the way, this book I'm referring to, in case you would know someone like that and want to refresh their image of it with an actual pictorial representation, here you can just have them look here. This is the cover. It says Brendan Mullen, Don Bolles, and Adam Parfrey. And it's called Lexicon Devil: The Short Life and Fast Times of Darby Crash and the Germs. Feral House Press, available from drugstores and drug dealers everywhere. Also in the forgotten mists of time, there's this whole mystique of Darby Crash as some sort of cult leader god, which is nice. You need that if you're a band, I guess. You gotta have something besides a chipped tooth to get you through it. But Darby was pretty brilliant. He was insanely brilliant. He was so brilliant, he really couldn't even talk to anybody. He had followers, not friends. And he was a very lonely guy. But he was a sad guy too in a lot of ways. But just like so many sad, lonely guys, he was one of the funniest motherfuckers I ever met. And he would rip you to shreds and make you laugh about it every hideous step of the way down. And he was a lot of fun to hang out with. And he was really, really brilliant. And that is how he got away with doing these heinous performances. I mean, look at the thing on the DVD. It's ridiculous. People watch that. It was the biggest band in LA. No shit. It was huge. And there were reasons for this. I don't think these reasons are readily apparent in this particular artifact, but it is one of the only artifacts of its kind. There are very few videos of the Germs. The only other ones I know are, well, there's the Target video footage, there's the stuff from the Decline of Western Civilization, which is not all that interesting. And it was even worse. Darby had to overdub his vocals for that. And there was this thing we did at Beverly Hills High School with their video facility, right when I just joined the band. It was intense. I mean, I probably thought it sucked at the time, but now I wouldn't mind seeing it. And they degaussed all their videotapes, so that's just gone forever. Here are a couple of the LP record albums that inspired the Germs. This was a big inspiration to Darby, Pat, and myself, separately, of course, and together. Listening to this guy was kind of brave and Phoenix in a way. It wasn't as obviously gay as David Bowie or something, where you'd get beat up for liking it. But it was weird. And everyone hated it because it was the age of Eric Clapton being cool and Guitar Heroes and the Beatles guitar solos. This inspired the Germs, of course. as did this. They were going through records they found in the cutout bin. They found this album, Pawn Hearts by Van der Graaf Generator, in the cutout bin. I have no idea why. It was a great album. Play a little of it in a minute. It also features Robert Fripp, who was in a band called King Crimson. Amazing guitar player, played with Eno. Did a couple of records with him, a number of them. And it has one of the greatest gatefold photos ever to grace an LP gatefold cover. I don't know, the Germs seems to me sort of a cross between Van der Graaf Generator, the Stooges, and the Go-Go's somehow. Here's the first record I was on, LA Free Music Society, Blubcrad. I was in this group called the Yvonnes playing bass. A bass I have here to show you right now, but someone broke in my house and took it a couple of weeks ago. Apparently they're bringing it back in a day or two with some apologies, so it's good they took it instead of someone that wouldn't have brought it back. That would have sucked, I guess. Before, the Yvonne stuff was recorded in Phoenix, and I still hadn't started playing drums really. But when I moved here, I guess I'd been playing drums in the Germs and total for, well, in the Germs for a couple of months, total for about 4 months. And we were on this. And it already said Germs GI, which, as you'll notice here, it says Germs GI. Everyone thinks GI is the name of this album, when it's actually Germs GI's eponymous debut LP, as the rock critics would put it, were they to ever realize that it was that. GI was acronymic for Germs Incognito, a name we never really had to use, but we thought we might because we never got to play clubs after a certain point. Apparently our fans are rather rambunctious and caused untold dollars worth of damage whenever we would play anywhere where there was anything valuable to be damaged. Even when there wasn't, it seemed like we were causing untold dollars worth of damage. Certainly causing all sorts of interesting chaos, we'll say that. Sometimes there were good shows. Too bad no one with a video camera ever saw one, at least not with the video camera on. This one actually was a good show. It's just, this mix is so pathetic. All you can hear is Darby just yelling into the microphone, completely off time with the music, singing about, oh, I don't know, 2.5 beats back, maybe. He had to get really loaded before he'd go on stage. So he'd claim, and so he did. So mote Ben. What else is there here? Oh yes, the original drummer of the Germs. More original than I. More original than Nicky Beat, their temporary drummer. Their first real drummer was a girl named Donna Rhea, who played drums because Belinda Carlisle, where is the little sweetheart? Belinda Carlisle, there she is. She was pretty gorgeous in her way. She was kind of scared to do it. She and Lorna had been drafted into the Germs at about the same time by Pat and Darby. They met him at a hotel waiting for Queen to show up or let them in their dressing room party or whatever. They did all these obnoxious things like running down the halls and like climbing the balcony, and it was, typical teenage behavior. They were like 14 years old, these people. And Belinda and Lorna answered an ad that Darby and Pat put up looking for 2 untalented girls to form a band with. They were going to call it Sophistifuck and the Revlon Spam Queens. And Lorna and Belinda called them up and said, hey, you're those Queen guys, huh? And that was that. And they were drafted into the band. When Belinda didn't, well, the stories vary. Lorna says she doesn't know what Belinda was talking about when she says she was ill, but as you might have gleaned from that last statement, Belinda said she was ill and couldn't do it. Lorna said it was more likely that she was just of the opinion that Darby and Pat were a little bit much, and she might do well to stay away. Whatever the case, she passed the duties on to Donna Rhea, her friend Becky. And Becky had a credit card because of her mom or something, and her grandma, I guess, well, here's the story though. apparently bought, well, she had a credit card so they could rent equipment when they'd play. And then eventually, I guess Darby's mom bought a bass guitar for Lorna to play and bought a mic for Darby. Like, singers really need mics. I guess you kind of need one to practice, but it's the funniest thing. The mic manufacturers make a killing off singers that think they actually need to buy mics. Everyone does it. You know, the teenage singer, their mom buys them a mic or something. Last thing someone needs, that's a singer. Anyway, I could go on, but why bother? Where the hell was I? Was I talking about anything? I didn't think so. Good night. Oh, yes. We were talking about Belinda. She was nice enough to get us a new drummer when she quit. So anyway, there was Becky, who had a credit card so they could rent equipment. Becky also purchased, well, her mom got the drum set that she played, and she got it by telling her grandmother bought it for her. She got it by telling her grandmother that she had leukemia. And so her grandmother kicked down a drum set to give the poor cancer-ridden child a last, fulfilled wish before death closed its iron grip around her. It was too bad, but she lived, and in fact didn't have leukemia at all, and still lives to this day. Germs LP, the eponymous debut LP by the Germs, LA's premier punk rock group. Here I am. What do you think? There's Lorna. She was an interesting musician, a good bass player in a lot of ways. She did whatever Pat told her to do, and did it very well after a while. She just would remember. The way she'd make a mistake, the only way that I ever heard her make mistakes was she would do the exact correct part, but she would do it like slightly on the wrong part of the neck, so the notes would be like a half step off. But it would be the right pattern. So, there was you could tell how she was working. It was cool. And Pat, an amazing musician. It's incredible. I don't know if some people you'd say they were self-taught. He was obviously divinely taught. He could just do it. And if he would think it, he would want to be able to do it. And I guess sometimes he probably had to practice. He's kind of got a nerdy streak. But I think he just sort of wished himself into great musicianhood. And then, of course, finally there was a Darby crash. This is around the time of that whiskey show. So we all look pretty similar to how we were there. In fact, it was really, really close to then. But the Germs album, we practiced a whole lot. And then went in the studio and did it. And I'd been playing probably 9 months when we did the record. But I'd intensely practiced, as had we all. We practiced our asses off. And we were really good. And this record still, to me, stands the test of time. A lot of stuff that I liked then, even, really didn't age nearly so well. I listen to most of the other punk stuff. It just sounds kind of quaint. And I don't know, it's kind of like, it's like listening to the Strawberry Alarm Clock or something. It's kind of a goofy, nostalgic kind of thing. But the Germs is like still this weird, terrifying half-step rock stuff that just kicks ass, kind of. And it is because we were just that way, and it was just that, it had to be like that. What were you going to do with those lyrics? Darby wrote incredible lyrics. That whiskey show that's on the DVD, Pat, you can see him kicking a bouncer in the head or hitting him with his guitar or something. And that caused a real furor, let me tell you. I guess the bouncer was giving shit to some kid, and Pat was a sweet guy. He was always smiling and always happy and he was ultra effeminate. Everyone thought he was gay, except his girlfriends. And he just had a bad streak in him. You know, he'd get a little bit of drink in him, not very much, and you could bet he'd be in some fight. And he'd still have that same beatific, I dare say, Billy Zoom, Mona Lisa smile on his face. He said it was more of a shit-eating Mona Lisa. Like if Mona Lisa was a chimp, that was very naughty and pleased about it. That was Pat. He was really awesome until just those moments. You just better hope that you weren't right there in front of him when he'd just snap and be the evil Pat. But he kicked this bouncer or something, and the Whiskey Bouncers, I mean, that place is a mafia club. You think they stay open on the Sunset Strip there because the Los Angeles City Council thinks their aesthetic policy is in line with the city's cultural programs? No. They stay open because they pay off the cops. And they pay off the cops because they can afford to pay off the cops because they own the cops. And they're the syndicate. So even if they didn't own the cops, they could own the cops. And they can own some pretty good bouncers who get total impunity as to how bounced the bouncee becomes. So they were looking for Pat. They wanted Pat's ass. They were going to take him out back and get him. So the omens and portents would have foretold, and he was having none of it. We snuck him out. Finally, we waited for hours, and the bouncers were waiting outside, hovering. There were a lot of them, and they were big, and they wanted to kill him because he really hurt the guy. The guy had to go to the hospital and stuff. And Pat, we snuck him out in a drum case. I think this other band was, oh yeah, I had a trap case. We snuck him out in my trap case, I think. Or it might have been the other band. Yeah, I don't know. But we snuck him out in a drum case, whatever it was. And we got him across the street and to the gas station or something. He started running. And he lived all the way in Hollywood from there. And it was West Hollywood. Sunset Strip's pretty far from Hollywood proper. He ran all the way back to like Wilcox and Hollywood Boulevard. Just never looking back, except over his shoulder, here and there to see if they were after him. And he didn't go out for months. But that just blew over, and nothing happened. I think he's okay now. Well, one of the things really missing from the book is just the Dada sense of insane teenage fun. It was, and I don't know if you'd call it wholesome exactly, but it was absolutely fucking ridiculous, and it wasn't about typical fucked up teenage stupid stuff like fighting and chicks and just drugs. It was no drugs, whatever. Drugs were just so there all the time, they were invisible. It's like, you don't need to see your eyes to know you're seeing out of your eyes. And it was just that way with a lot of stuff. We just didn't really think about it, and it strikes me as odd that others outside of that couldn't see it that way. And I'll read something that it's perfectly good. The stuff Brendan contributed to the book, a lot of it was great, and some of the things he contributed, which were raw interviews, were indispensable. We could not have done it without him at all. But some of the things, well, he was looking at it from the viewpoint of the guy who ran the Mask, which is a club. He was sort of in the position of being an entrepreneur. Besides having a good time being a drunk punk rock freak, and as were we all. I wasn't that drunk all the time, but that wasn't my thing. But I was no less a freak. But Brendan and most other people that look back at that time, or even were looking at it then through the eyes of someone outside of our little circle, as it were, they never really get it. Because they try to relate it to the music business or to punk rock as a whole. And like so many weird things, it really, sure, it was kind of like that, but there was something so different about it that it's difficult to explain except by sheer weight of uh, of incidents and coincidence and minutiae, uh, adding up to some sort of weird granular image after a while. And a lot of that really couldn't go in the book because we did want it to tell a story more than tell the truth, you know. And there's a lot of truth. Who knows what it is? We left all the contradictions in the book, and the whole thing was filled. As any cool thing is fraught with contradictions, and which to me are a favorite thing. I love a nice paradox every now and then. It was a really weird time. I mean, I could have written a book about the food fights alone. That would have been great. Would have been nice to have like an NHL stats book sort of thing on just the food fights that the Germs were involved with. And that would have been a lot more true account of the Germs than a chronicle of the shows and of the band members and who and what they were. That really wasn't a thing that much. It was, but I don't know. It wasn't what was interesting about it, really. And if that was interesting, then cool. Then that means this other shit was really fucking interesting. People wonder what happened to the Germs. Well, let me tell you. All the bacteriological soap in the world is not going to be enough to get rid of them, apparently. They're still here. And the record has never been out of print since its first printing in 1979. So, I guess it's eternal to the degree that anything like that is. And, it does still sound pretty good to this day. I mean, I can hear all my mistakes and cringe a little bit at them, but, it really does sound good. Joan Jett was a big part of that. And once again, I'll give her mad props. It's current young people slang in case it's over by the time you hear this, which I really hope it is. But the prevailing opinion, for those who know or care, of Joan Jett's contribution to this album, she was the producer. The Runaways was another prime inspiration to the Germs. They were teenage girls who had a rock band and they were sort of kicking ass and having a great time. And who didn't want to do that? Everyone wanted to be a teenage girl kicking ass in a rock band. I know I did. And Joan, originally Darby wanted Mark Lindsay to produce the record for Slash. But I think Bob Biggs called Mark Lindsay, and Mark Lindsay was prohibitively expensive. Just forget it. It was just not going to happen. So we tried to think of who the most famous person was that we knew that we could get to produce our record, so we could get their name on it and maybe sell a few more and get famous and take over the world. And that person was Joan Jett. And she was a good friend of ours. We used to party at her house, man. Where is she? There's some pictures in here. Here's Joan Jett and some of the Germs. There's Darby on the floor when he was Bobby Pin. And there's Pat in the back looking kind of like a thing. There's Joan on the right. There's some unidentified people. And I think X8 from the flip side, maybe, in that picture. I'm not sure. God, weird. There's an early picture of the Germs. And that's with their first drummer, Donna Rhea. Well, their second drummer after Belinda Carlisle. Interesting. Hey, look, there I am. Pictures of Rudolf Schwarzkogler, falsely listed as being pictures of Herman Nietzsche by someone. Luckily, that wasn't me, so I can just sit here and poke fun at it. That's one good thing about not being listed as first author. There's Darby's grave. And then he died. The end. Well, everything was going all right, I guess. And then, well, you'll have to read the book to see what happened. But yeah. What did happen? Well, I guess things just got weird, and Darby wanted to, I guess Darby wanted to have his boyfriend Rob Henley in the band, and I was kind of he couldn't kick Pat or Lorna out, and they'd just been in it from the beginning, you know, with him. So I had to go, and he was going to make Rob Henley, his boyfriend, play drums. And this didn't really sit too well with Pat and Lorna. We'd rehearsed all this time. We were playing great together. Everything was cool. But I guess Darby and I just had this kind of like thing. I mean, he just felt competitive or something and weird. It was sort of like a Brian Ferry Eno thing or something. And whatever, you know, it's his band, you know. So, but then he wanted to do he did the Darby Crash Band, which was this rather ill-starred thing. It was terrible. Pat was in it, but just because he felt sorry for him, and the guy couldn't get it together to have a band. He was so gone on heroin all the time by then, and he wasn't very happy in general. But he'd always talked about suicide and how he had 5 years, like the Bowie song, you know. And you just said, okay, Darby, that's cool, whatever, and just went on with what you were doing and didn't really think about it after a while. But I guess he came back from England, and his band wasn't doing so good, and then, well, he wanted to do a last show, a reunion show, and I'd been kicked out of the band for a while. We hadn't done any shows, and they didn't manage to do any shows with Rob Henley, because apparently he just could not play drums at all, and they just quit on the spot. Lorna just said, forget it, I quit, and that was that. And so we just didn't exist. And then Darby went to England with Amber, and they hung out with Adam Ant, this girl Amber, and they hung out with Jordan and Adam Ant and these people. And Darby got really fascinated with Adam Ant, and he came back with a Mohican cut that he got from Jordan, this high Mohican cut. It was ridiculous, it's amazing. And there's a picture of it in here. He was really into this Adam Ant thing, just way into it. So, oh God, this Mohican thing is so lame. Here he is. But he did this here before Adam Ant did this here. So that was kind of interesting. And a lot of people really associated it with him. When Adam Ant came here and did that, they'd already seen Darby doing it. So it was kind of weird. It kind of worked in a way. Here's Darby and Pat and the Darby Crash. He started the Darby Crash Band. Anyway, it was just so lame. And finally, like, it was such a failure that they just wanted to do another Germs show to show the kids how it was or something. So we did, and here we are. We practiced. I said, sure, you know, and I didn't have any hard feelings against him. I didn't care. You know, by then, you know, I had my own stuff going on. And I liked doing the Germs stuff. I thought it was great. I wasn't going to let some stupid, grudgeful idiocy make it not happen. So I thought we were going to be a band again. Everything was going to be great, and we were going to go out and take over the world, you know, like we were supposed to, and march on as the, you know, weird fucking half-step juggernaut we were. And we rehearsed a lot, and we were so good. We were just this intense fucking chaos driver. You know, we were getting the job done pretty extremely, and it just sounded great. And sure enough, on the night of the show, it still sounded good, and we just kicked ass. You might have heard a shitty recording of that show, because there is one going around, but I'm trying to get a way to get the real tape out of the guy who recorded it and release it at some point, because it is pretty good. In reality, the real tape is a million miles better than any of the other things that are currently available. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Gosh, maybe it'll happen, and maybe it's already happened by now. By the time you're hearing this, whatever. But here's the show again. Looks exciting, doesn't it? Well, I don't know how exciting it was. I was just playing drums. And it seemed like people thought it was exciting. they're all out there in the Starwood, beating each other up and jumping around and having a good old time, getting their noses punched in. That was some of it appears on this. That's What We Do Is Secret. It's not actually an album. It's a sort of a extended EP. It's an EP.
So then what happened at the show?
Oh, here's the flyer for the show. Rather famous image. Oh, what did happen? Well, we played the best show we ever played, probably, or one of the best, and it just really kicked butt. And then we went backstage, and Darby apparently told this girl, Casey Cola, who he had some sort of weird suicide pact with, "I've got the drugs and I got the money, let's go," or something. So and he also said, I'll meet y'all at Okie Dog at the end of the show. Okie Dog is a hangout frequented by a lot of the Germs crowd and a lot of punk rockers, the number of punk rockers having grown exponentially by then. And this is 1980, December 1980. And nobody really went because it was raining, actually, but I think he kind of took it personally. He was feeling a little weird and saying he was going to kill himself. And the Darby Crash Band, like I said, was failing pretty badly. It was just pathetic. It was bad. It was worse than everyone hated it. It was just, no one cared. It was boring. So, and everyone loved the Germs. So it felt weird, his solo thing, everyone's bored by it. The Germs, everyone's like, yeah, going crazy. So, I don't know what that had to do with anything, but it probably didn't make him feel as special as he could have felt in his mind, I suppose. Who knows? I don't want to try and guess about what someone else was thinking about. I sure know him a lot better after having written and read that book. But like I was saying before, he really wasn't so much about like any of the business stuff. In there's an interview that got cut up that somehow someone got him to talk about music business crap. I don't know how they did that, but it's the only interview that no one had ever printed, and now you can see why. But there was a lot of stuff about the music business and about petty shit with bands hating us or liking us, and it's dumb stuff. And yeah, we had that, but mostly he wouldn't talk about stuff like that. Didn't care about it. He was just talking about and think about weird, fucked up stuff, whatever thing came into his mind. And believe me, lots of things went there, and a few things left. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fucked up fun, and there was absolutely no point to any of it. It was cool. He was a really brilliant psychedelic guy. He did so much acid, like lots. Him and Pat, and well, I did too, separately. I don't know about Lorna. I'm sure she did some. Maybe it's how she got her hair that way. I don't know. In closing, I would like to basically state that the Germs was as musical as it was, not really so much about music as about attaining a state. And that state may be sort of like the one obtained by the Moroccan Sufi dervishes, who get into such a frenzy when in their musically enhanced trance state that while they're doing their dervish dancing that earned them the name the Whirling Dervishes, while they're doing this sort of insane, just crazy movement thing, they also will, totally without even knowing or thinking about it, will grab small animals from the ground and just devour them alive. And it's apparently quite a thing. So whatever the shortcomings of the relation to the music and the vocals, also remember, and this DVD, also remember, it didn't sound like that at the Whiskey. You couldn't hear the vocals at all. You just heard this. Who cared if it was coming a little late? It was buried by the.
you know.